Recording going? Actually, yeah, I can just ask the question anyways. It's okay
Just
if it's
about,
not.
just about. I think it stopped like broadcasting voice because I think maybe my laptop got overheated, and now I just close the Discord and try it again. Um, um, yeah, let's see if it works. I'm recording again. Um, but yeah,
Thank you, man. Thank you.
and I'm just like not. I'm just giving other people thoughts, letting other people speak on the topic because I always have some thoughts on different things and don't want to, you know, be speaking all the time.
How does one start a journey? I'd like to just ask that question. And what does that mean? I don't know if there's an answer yet, but I'll just ask that question.
Yeah. So I think the last time we spoke on this was towards the beginning. I think Haas was still in some of the sessions, and the last time we actually spoke on that. And it, as I remember, unless I'm mistaken, could be as simple as a post, right, in a designated channel for it. Um, and we also got into how we can get into attaching system design through a template that goes along with starting a journey the same way that there's like a template for did a thing and props, right? But in this case, right, we use this as an opportunity to get folks to ask to think about commons, right? What might be making up their commons, coming out of their commons, going into their commons, if they hadn't thought about that before. And asking folks to think about multidisciplined journeys, right, is an important part to system design. I think that came up organically, and it just also happens to be very fundamental to system design and accessibility to information flows, right? As opposed to different compartmentalized projects or what have you. And so, this started going into what could make up the template. We also got a roadmap, I think, that a brief roadmap, but not even a true roadmap in terms of dates and times, but of just some of the things that came out of some of our first sessions in the Advocates repo. And we touch on some of the template ideas there as well, and have touched on them in quite a few meetings after the fact. But then we've had more folks come in and try to wrap their heads around what we mean by system design version or system design approach to these bounty models or task creation models as opposed to product design. And so we've kind of gotten back into some of that conversation in the later sessions. But some of those first recordings around journeys, you should be able to see some of our first discussions around some of the templates that might make up the first journeys, right? And a way of attaching system design to it. And yeah, we briefly touched on maybe, I've mentioned in these sessions as of late, right? Like you can have three designers on the same project in the same journey, what have you, right? But if one identifies as, wolf, one identifies as turtle, other as bear, have very different lenses or approaches, to the same discipline or background or effort. And so it might get interesting to see the way the clans start to show through in the way the journeys are organizing themselves. And some of the discussion that we had at the beginning and got away from in the terms of it being a blocker to actually, having multidiscipline roles go into the different templates of the journeys. And so, yeah, hopefully that's a long-winded answer to your question of how one starts a journey, hypothetically, because I think it still has to come out of these working groups, exactly how it gets implemented. And in what ways Haas might have tooling from PolicyKit that assists whatever flows we come up with in these working groups around journeys. And one of the big ideas was not leaving folks behind, leveraging the system design to bring folks together who wouldn't normally be put together or might miss a chance, right, to participate. So yeah, shut up and see if there's any other questions.
So can I ask to put like the most simple way to describe a journey? Is journey a project? Or is there another one word or two word phrase that you can perhaps summarize journey? And the word commons? I think these two things are still a little bit abstract for me, journey and commons. And then, so yeah, a couple of words for those things. And then a follow-on question from templates. You said there are templates available or some stuff, and that template is to create a journey or something. So could you give like an example, a real life example of if that's been done, or how do you see if that's not been done yet? Yeah, what's an example of that could be done on? Thanks.
Yes. And the answer is no, it hasn't been done yet, and it'll likely come out of these working groups how it gets done, and it's journeys that is our reimagining of what is normally considered bounty, bounty models or task creation models. That you would, fairly common in the Web3 space. And so Haas had the idea of instead of, having a bounty program, we have a journeys program or a journeys part of the advocates where, certain things that are deemed needed by the community and, folks want to gather folks around in terms of helping complete we could have our own version of bounties and task creation. So I guess if you're looking for other words, right, it would be those. But also you mentioned projects, and of course the project is a sufficient term as well. But in your question about templates, the idea is to, much like there's a did a thing template, to have a journeys template. And we just discussed this, nothing set in stone, but it came up in these sessions that maybe this is our opportunity to, bring a system, build in a system design culture in this part of the advocates. And so your question about commons becomes important. Right? Because that's one of the bigger things that I think starts to get people thinking about system design and starting to think about in their respective journeys, right? What we've discussed here before, unalienated value flows, right? Which, you kind of need a regenerative, not just any commons design, but a regenerative commons design to be able to get to that point of thinking about unalienated value flows in your respective journey. And that's essentially what system design is, right? You're not hyper focused on spitting out a product at the expense of labor, at the expense of expression of the people, the generators of value in your respective journey, right? It's clarity review, right? You asked for an example, or it's docs review or translation, procurement or review, right? You wouldn't want to, have folks on a treadmill of spitting out translation. They don't feel they're getting compensated, or their voice isn't being brought into the innovation of how their workflow is, or any of these things that you can end up with product design, or the all the things that horizontality would bring, right, in terms of innovation, getting locked out of what's possible in journeys, right? And so this is part of the ethos of our broader system design, in terms of how top-down power can stamp out innovation, and how we can unlock innovation by having horizontal power distribution. And so, and it's a way of keeping this true, even at the edges of our system design, right? Which journeys might turn out to be one of the more complex parts of growth of the advocate system. We want to make sure that there's a consistency in the culture of advocates in terms of long-term sustainability, open source, privacy, but also this system design approach to organizing ourselves that is also conducive to long-term, right? Whereas top-down isn't so conducive to long-term as it is to extraction in the short term. And so, it's just about trying to keep some consistency there, and commons being in the definition of it, being this regenerative values, circulation once it leaves the commons, but what it's made up of could be the intrinsic motivations around going into translation, right? It could be different invisible exchanges between people across different borders or within borders, that start to make up the generators of value in the respective translations or what have you. And so commons, right, in addition to what may be funding that's attached to that particular journey, is more so referring to not just the actual translation work that gets completed, which obviously starts to make up the commons, but some of the less obvious stuff too, like the invisible exchanges. And so commons, in the indigenous context, you would think of as in more like concrete terms that are easy to explain to somebody. It's the corns, beans, and squash, right? The commons of agriculture, or commons of land. But it's also important in the indigenous context to start naming some of those invisible exchanges as well. To name especially the regenerative aspect of corns, beans, and squash, right? And so, I think I may be. I hope you asked a few questions there about commons, about what exactly a journey is, about the template, and I think the last point that I'll mention is, we mentioned including commons in the template for journeys for the reasons I just described, but also it came up naturally to have a slot for all the different disciplines across advocates that this particular journey is looking for, right? Something like that, a description of what the journey is, obviously, but then, asking folks to start thinking about what makes up their commons, and so on and so forth. And so that's the type of template that we were thinking about. So yeah, I think I answered all your questions there. Hopefully, it's a little bit clearer.
I think I'm like 70% there. So journey model is like almost a better version, or more like in-depth, more complex version of bounty model, which the journey model will include task creation. So the bounty model is it's just a design, but a journey model design will be even better. And then, so I don't understand what's commons. Commons is a forum. Like, what's a one word thing for commons? Or is it founding? I still don't get the word. Or is it like gathering? I don't know.
No. Yeah, I think you're asking a very good question, right? Because I think we often will convolute all of those different things when talking about commons, and I think commons does speak to all of those different things. In the indigenous context, you wouldn't have the money part, right? But you
Right.
would maybe have shells, right, that are tracking and doing accounting
Right.
of the commons in some shape or form. So there's it, I think the most simplest way to think about it is a commons of land, right, and peer-to-peer management of that land. But then you can extrapolate that to any so-called resource, right, including each other, including our voices, including you know, you know, labor on our terms, expression on our terms. All of that makes up, and how it's all managed, right? All of that makes up the commons as well. But it's a collectively shared resource, right?
Right.
Is the
Okay. Yeah, that
simplest
makes sense.
describing it. But I think there's a big distinction, right, in regenerative commons and even the name resource, right, which usually loaded with exploitation or extraction
Yeah.
without so much reciprocity.
So it's like a collectively shared resource that's regenerative in the modern language,
Yep.
but it's more
Yeah.
complex than that.
Yeah. Because
Yeah. Let's go.
yeah. Because what you said about gathering and all of this is a big part of I mean, you can't have anything collective without the gathering of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Inherent.
Okay. So if I were to go about starting a journey tomorrow, what do I do in the disco present context? Do I go and start I'm trying to think. So like
We would likely, yeah. Go ahead.
I make currently I guess I'll make a thread about um, take your example for translations, and what you like to achieve is have more people come together to that particular topic maybe, and we have a gathering of ideas of how we could expand or help with that translation topic. Maybe it was translated to Indonesian, and then some other guy jump on and say, "Oh, I will translate the same article but in Polish." Is that how you see Journey, perhaps, or like is that a case study for um, you know Journey?
Yeah. I think we likely have a designated channel, right, where folks know that this is going to be available, right? A point of access to jump on what is essentially task creation, and hopefully there's some incorporation of the template in before any of the threads are started. But yeah, I think that's potentially a starting point.
So maybe it's like I initiate the task, right? Not like Harold needs something done. Like could somebody help me translate? Not like you create a project. Say, could someone go and do this project? It's more like I plug in and I think, oh, I will create something. Do other oh, okay. So it's like I create a task. Are other people interested to do this task with me.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Exactly.
make sense of it.
Exactly. No, it's exactly right. And it's instead of, usually in bounty programs, you might have the top of an organization deciding, okay, we need this stuff done, right? So we need this particular tool built. So we're gonna offer, this amount of thousands of dollars to get devs to get it done for us. And that's the way the whole program is engendered, right? So on and so forth. But in our case, it would be a more of a horizontal accessibility, while also asking for a cultural norm of not spamming the channel with things that aren't maybe as well thought out, right? That asking folks to think about system design instead of product design may engender that fairly organically, right? But it'll be interesting to see, what it turns into. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Just folks asking for help in these hopefully a little bit well thought out projects, right? Whether it's translation work or what have you, and they can come together in thinking of innovative ways of doing translation together, like you mentioned, right, in the thread even. Yeah.
So it's almost like, yeah, okay. I think would be just great to just test out the workflow, if the workflow already exists, or we are actually just trying to come up with the workflow basically in this session.
No, exactly. These working groups will be where the flow comes out of, whatever flow it
Okay,
is.
cool.
And
So I guess the most practical way I can think of it perhaps is, like in some channels or one channel, we have I am about to do a thing, or I have a plan for doing a task, and anybody in Stacks Advocate interested, please raise your hand. And it's a bit like the event calendar. You express your interest, you press the button interested, and then the event will come up. It will remind you of the event. So you have like a list of people for that event. So I guess like I create a task, and however many people interested, we will try to gather together, have some sort of discussion about our plan to go forward with the completing the task. So we will probably meet in the, so I do a job posting, not job, but if I just go with that phrase for now, but we can improve on the phrasing of it. I make a job posting saying Hero would like to create a, a Twitter thread about Stacks and its ecosystem stuff to promote Stacks. But I have some I like some help because I don't know enough about DeFi. I like a DeFi person to come on board. And then maybe the other thing is I need an NFT guy to write a little bit blur about NFT. But I will be writing the Stacks blockchain stuff. So you have a few people joining posts, but the purpose of the Twitter post is to give an overview of some Stacks stuff going on. So what I do is I go to this channel, do a job posting saying anybody interested, raise your hand, and let's come together. Let's break down the tasks you do this, I do this, we do that, I do this, and we have a catch up again, and we review our work, and then we finish the job. But throughout this journey, if you like, we have given the access to everybody who's interested. The horizontality, not a top-down decision thing. So I make a job posting, people come together, we interact with having those invisible exchanges or whatever, and we finish the task. Little bit more like currently we have a lot of tasks that are done alone and very black and white, very like I completed A and I get some money, and then end of the story. But I guess what we're saying is if we can make these, I guess a different scenario would be there is more, you are not just doing the task alone, you are involving people, you are interacting with people, you're building up you're gathering people, there's a collective there, and you are all sharing the invisible intrinsic value together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah. We had the idea of different roles as well. In the Discord, speaking to different disciplines, backgrounds, and then having it a part as a template to mention these as something to what you mentioned, right, in terms of help gather folks around multiple disciplines in a particular journey. And it's the idea too was this could be a big point of the connection to ambassadors program, right, and the grants program, where this is a place where you're not just getting tasks done, but you're getting, it's a place to get compensated for getting these tasks done as well, right? But again, like you mentioned, the monetary incentive should go into the background, while these these more sustainable sustainability based incentives or long-term based incentives are brought to the foreground. And so the horizontal working with each other, as opposed to a top-down, project runner type of thing, or even what would be just conventional organization around product design. With the template, right, we're really encouraging, even if folks really don't know how to work outside of these more conventional structures, and just in asking folks to think about commons, asking folks to think about to name their different kinds of unalienated value in their given system, zooming out and not being hyper focused on the consumer facing parts of their project, but also looking at how they're organizing themselves in a healthy way, a long-term sustainable way. And so asking them to think about commons in both the obvious ways and the more invisible ways, to what was just mentioned, hopefully, right, just starts to break down some of these product design structures for getting tasks created, and unlocks a whole lot of innovation in the way these tasks are getting created. We're excuse me, initially also thinking about how it can start to eliminate some repeat tasks, in bringing folks together first, and broadening up the innovation capacity, with the horizontality, but also uh, uh, we felt that there could be a lot done in the way of accessibility too, when it comes to conventional bounty programs, leaving folks behind, and bringing in Policy Kit in ways that we plan to use it for the consensus flow, where there's these windows of time for participation in important decision making built into the particular journey, the way that we want to build it into, say, periods for important decision making, where we want to include as many voices as possible. Well, we can include as many people that this particular journey might speak to as possible before the journey moves on to the next stage of, organizing itself, for example. And so that's some of the things we were thinking about in previous sessions, in incorporating it into how the journey gets implemented, and the kind of the gather, how we can implement some of the gathering that you were speaking to right now. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much where we've gotten to up until now in these sessions, and we've recently even started to bring in what may be some additions to the templates. And I think some of the sessions you may have even participated in, Hero, right, where you had a conversation with Loke that made me think about an addition to the template that says, a learning position, right, or a coordination position in each, a learning position, or something that could be a learning position in each journey. To speak to some of what Loke was speaking to. So maybe even if, I referenced the ambassador program, right, and how what might start out as a learning position in a much smaller grant, with the upskilling and everything, we're trying to build in as much as possible into the system design of journeys. Can turn into, community support and community guided grants, right? And I don't think we should be thinking of journeys as a separate thing from grants. We should see it as an important mechanism to the grants program, right? And it's something that usually comes with conventional bounty programs and task creation, which is like this. Folks know they're going to be compensated for their contributions. It's just our bottom-up means of engendering what the community deems needed, right? And also keeping it as open as possible for how they get what they need, right? Encouraging system design over product design in the program. So yeah, I think that's also one of the things that we discussed in the recent session was not folks who aren't available, for example, in translation, having something in the template that speaks to this too, so that folks don't feel like they need to commit to a particular journey and get left out of the loop or what have you, right? So something similar to, I guess it speaks to accessibility as well, right? But also speaks to some concerns that Sleepy had for real life translation work right now, where folks may not all be available, right, at the same time. But yeah, it just seems like a fuller and fuller spectrum of accessibility thinking for journeys. But yeah, I'll shut up.
So I'll ask a question, and then also like to hear others' thoughts. So I guess, are you thinking of Journey, applying Journey to more the how the current grants program that GitHub works, and by building a better system design that we can help um, make it even more comprehensive and cohesive grants program? Or is that, are you talking Journey on a macro level like that, or are you talking about the micro level, like the thing we are doing in the data thing? Yeah, which one are you referring to?
No, I think it's more relevant to the macro, right? It should be considered a connector to ambassador program, the way the ambassador programs are connected to the
Oh, right,
grants
I
program.
see.
And the way I've explained it to Will, right, of the ambassador program is that it can be where a lot of the complexity is in gathering community support, in gathering community guidance around grants, right?
I see.
Preserving community values going forward too, right? Which is all. It's a little bit more complex than just saying, here's this money, come get it. There's a lot of room but that's what you need facing people, right? To bring as a point of accessibility, because it's so cut and dry, it's so simple. It doesn't. It's not going to be convoluted in the way that these sessions can be, right? So like if you're facing out a program, that's why I think it's perfectly fine that there's grants program, then ambassadors program, and ambassadors program is thinking of having this knowledge base thing, that essentially would be huge for us, right, in terms of exposing system design, right, because it'll be a somewhat of an explorer for folks to learn and educate themselves on different models emerging from the grants program, right, and so and a nice simple dashboard for that is beautiful, and it would be it's almost impossible to ask folks before they get into before they even know that the grants program exists to get into some of these deeper questions that you're asking about commons, deeper questions about fundamental incentives for sustainability as opposed to incentives for short-term extraction, and which one is more conducive to blockchain-based systems, which one is more conducive to preserving community values, all of that, right? You don't want to put in the landing page for the grants program. That's understandable, but you do still want it as in terms of all of those good things mentioned, right? Going in the long term for your community, and so we're just a point of access to the complexity of the grants program without them having to think about it as the ambassadors or as some of the folks that had set up the original structures for the grants program. That's something that they don't have to think. It's one of the beauties of decentralized open source communities, right? Is that and hopefully one of the beauties of horizontality in those systems as well is that we're here for that, right? We're here as folks passionate about that, the same way that they're passionate about ensuring that there's accessibility to the grants program, or the grants program is growing. We're passionate about it growing healthily. We're passionate about figuring out how we can achieve it growing healthily as a legitimate research and development problem and solution, right? And so, yeah, I think it fits nicely all together, and I think that's how we should probably be thinking about it in terms of a fundamental mechanism for the community going forward. Yeah, I think those other layers of the grants program are perfect in getting folks to us, and then us, having some preservation of core values built right into the grants program in that way. Which, yeah, I don't know if it can be done any other way. When I think about it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm getting. I got what you're saying. I get what this whole Monday session is about now. Yeah, but it's just so basically we need to think of a few proposals, one or two, whatever, and delivering that proposal to the whoever is in charge of the grants program, that they will buy into the idea of this particular proposal and the
Well,
intrinsic
we've already,
benefit of it.
yeah, well, we've already had some discussion
Oh,
around
right,
this for
okay.
some time. With different folks in the ecosystem. This has gone back
Oh, long
into
way. Okay, long time.
governance working group sessions. A couple of years ago now,
Yeah.
even, or a year ago at least. And just different strains of it coming up again, right? And
Okay.
these sessions is another evolution of it. And like I said, I mentioned, already discussed some of this with Will, right? In this exact same way that I've discussed it with you right now.
Mhm.
And Haas and myself have, if I'm not mistaken, had these conversations with Jenny and other folks from the foundation. And it's fairly organic, right, in terms of how it can there's nothing stopping anybody from submitting a grant right now, right? And so all we have to do is we just make that a part of the journeys process as well, right? Grant submission is something that is part and parcel to it. So it inherently becomes a branch of the grants program and the ambassadors program, and we have already, right, a lot of advantages on our side in terms of a place for advocates being a place for garnering community support, which is important for getting approved for a grant, right? For garnering community guidance in what may be missed points in your grant application, or some correction of maybe there's some proprietary stuff in there that should be open source, or some privacy stuff that needs to be corrected. All of that, right? In addition to the nuances of system design that we're adding on to it. This is a prime place, right, where there's already a lot of core stack support, right, that is conducive to getting support for your grant from the community, getting guidance from the community for your grant in terms of corrections, all of that, right? So it can very organically become an extension of the grants program, just a virtue of what the Advocates is already. And so, in addition to conversation with them, right, there's just this built-in bridge work to the grants program that we can achieve.
Yeah, I wonder what Locke thinks.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I don't have too much to chime in today, to be honest with you. I do have COVID, so I'm not feeling the best, but I'm just happy to be here. I'm honestly not feeling well. I don't really have too much to add into today, to be honest with you guys, but
no problem, man.
I'm just listening and just kind of drinking my tea here and just relaxing. I'm feeling fine, but not much to really chime in on today.
Good, man. It's good to know you're okay. Your symptoms aren't too bad. Thank you.
Hey, if I'm in the meeting, clearly they're not that bad, right? So
right. No,
good to be here, right? I've been sleeping all day, so no, I'm happy to be here.
No, that's a huge compliment, right? You're for COVID for COVID safe, or what have you.
No, I appreciate it. But nonetheless, it's just journeys in general. I know, Hero, you were saying about starting your own journey. I think we just need to, personally, what I've been thinking, like I said, the POAP, we need to get more on that. I had a really busy last week, so we never really got to meet, but hopefully we can maybe meet this week about some POAP stuff, and maybe we can start that as one of our journeys and working discussions.
I think from my understanding of who Locke is, just from him being in the session, tell me if I'm wrong, Locke. So my understanding is you are much more like a person who wants to um, like convert the idea and put it into practice. Like you wanna get your hands dirty and do it, right? Um, um, is that right? Because you're more like a practical person.
100%, yeah, agree with you. Practical, kind of straight to the point.
Yeah, more
And,
like an engineer type.
Yeah, I actually am an engineer. It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
I went to
So
school for electrical engineering, right?
and
So
the reason why I'm asking this is because I think each person has different strength and
I like
different
that. Like you said earlier, each of us, like you need an NFT guy.
yeah
You need
different
who can build his.
interests, different strength.
Yeah,
Personally,
well-rounded.
I like the conceptual stuff that we are talking about with Harold, but also at the same time, I'm very much, maybe because of Wet 2 thinking, like very much want to get on and turn this Harold's idea or our idea, in this session into practice, into reality by spreading word, building stuff out there somehow. So that's why I'm constantly asking, how is the user going to be using it, and what's the user experience like? Do I post something in the Discord? It's because I'm also thinking like, how do I actually implement this idea? With POAT stuff that you were talking about, Log, and the reason why I started asking you this is because the POAP session, our last session, we are still a little bit at the ideas phase, at the conversational phase, hasn't quite got to the implementations phase because I think we realized we need to get the purpose of it first.
For sure, like kind of like the shell, do like a flow chart of it, and just kind of understand.
Yeah, I
approach
think we still need at
implement.
least 1 or 2 sessions of making sense of what the end goal is, and then we choose the technology, whether it be NFT or Discord bots or policy kit or a combination of. So it's more like we need to make sense of it and then deliver with the appropriate technology. That's my understanding of where we are with POAP.
For sure, for sure. I think my biggest, like you said, not even POAP, is just more so focusing more on chain, just like bringing things more on chain, because I think that people don't. I think like people don't realize how centralized we really are. Not saying stacks, saying like crypto in general.
Yeah,
It seems it's very centralized right now, and a lot of stuff. Like if you really think about it, I don't think any of the NFTs right now. Majority of Ethereum and stacks are stored on IPFS.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of people are utilizing on-chain technology, and that's something that really interests me. Is minting projects that store their pictures on-chain. So imagine, one day your IPFS Web 2 goes down, you don't have access to your NFTs, right? They're not there. So storing it on chain, it's kind of like what I'm really into and interested into, because that's something that I find cool in utilizing our technology. I think it's the way that we utilize these coins in the systems of them depends on us, really, right? How we take the approach, not focusing on Web 2 as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of our last POAP working group touched on this. Haas guiding us towards changing the name of just Invisible Exchanges instead of POAP working group. Invisible Exchanges is actually coming out a lot of Heroes language around trying to make sense around what we meant by intrinsic motivations, or making sense of what we're trying to achieve, right? With making what is usually invisible in for the convenient sake of alienated value, extracting value from labor, expression, ecosystems. When you don't have that intent, you can make the things that are usually invisible visible, to shift, shift a paradigm away from scarcity to abundance and regenerative commons or what have you. And so we, knowing that we're changing some of the POAP terminology to mean autonomy as opposed to attendance, we figured that it could be confusing more than anything for folks. And if we just change it to invisible exchanges, right? Which, the access to autonomy when accessing commons is a form of exchange, right? It's a form of exchange from the collective to the individual, which is arguably a very interesting dynamic to start to track. And so yeah, we know we have the means to implement it with folks around us at Boom. Haas himself very adept at smart contracts. So to your point, to you guys' points about on-chain, I think this is one of the few cases where it actually makes sense to have NFTs, this is one of the cases where just the smart contract alone has a function in our system design. So if it's in the form of a picture that gets on chain, right? It's not for the sake of scaling, these pictures going on chain indefinitely. So you don't have the problems, that can come with overusing a blockchain. But also, right, there's the Stacks architecture of client-side data that, I'm not mistaken, how is Boom, when you look at any NFTs saved on Boom, they're not using IPFS or anything, right? They're leveraging all stack stuff, right? If I'm mistaken, what you see it in the Explorer or something in terms of you see it right in the wallet, right? So I'd imagine. Are you guys aware? I'm blanking on exactly what they used.
I'm not sure. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they're not using IPFS or anything. So yeah, we'll likely be using. We'll likely, one of our most accessible implementations of it will be Boom or something like this, right? Haas is who's behind Free Punks as well, right? So, we can probably have some implementations sooner than we think. And yeah, maybe you're right, Hero, in terms of a few more sessions around, all of the things that we can track the morphology of. But I think we'll be focusing on autonomy, right, to begin with. And so maybe that means we can implement faster than we think as well, right? Since we're wrapping our heads around what that is. We even have some of these processes, right, where we're onboarding folks with the form, having these community calls that can be attached to these, some type of NFT minting, right? That can be the beginning of our intrinsic exchange working group,
Right. So the idea is to perhaps for earlier release, we first figure out exactly what to track, which is autonomy, and also Locke can join the discussion of how to track. And we go from there. That's like level 1. But then level 2 is more like bigger than just autonomy, which we would also like to track. Something like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which Locke can also join and everything. So yeah, if that makes sense, Locke.
No, by all means, I'd be happy.
No, I'm just trying to make sense for myself, like what's going on like status wise. So the current status is let's track autonomy, whatever that is, but we'll figure that out in a session with Harrod. And then once we have a micro thing implemented of tracking autonomy, we can move to level 2 tracking even more than just autonomy.
And it's a lot of what we did in the first session too, right? Like I mentioned just now too, right? Like what we mean by tracking autonomy would be, when we're onboarding folks into our governance system has very specific mechanisms for autonomy that other governance systems will not. They're not in dialogue with indigenous folks that could ever expose them to this fundamental mechanism of autonomy in relation to regenerative commons, right? And so just by virtue of folks participating in the onboarding into different temporary clan structures and whatnot, right? This is onboarding into, this is an opportunity for folks to opt into felt autonomy, right? And then for us to start to track our collective felt autonomy. One of the instances can be these onboarding processes, whether it be, you guys have participated in, or at least Hero has, and Merrick maybe, if I'm not mistaken, participated in the community call, right? Where we're going through the Figma, you filled out the form, right? This is a process that then, after completing, you guys can decide, you want to opt into a felt autonomy in, what is the beginning of governance onboarding. Then once you're actually participating in governance and your voice being heard, that's even more straightforward means or opportunity for folks to opt into a felt autonomy in the process. Did you feel autonomy in this process? And so on and so forth. And so, but I think those would be our first two concrete opportunities to implement this type of invisible exchange tracking, right? But yeah. I actually have a hard stop right